All right, so there are, so welcome everyone. We're going to go over a couple of our user group house rules and housekeeping items. So in order to ensure that our mugs stay user focused and a safe space for members of the Market Nation to learn and network and problem solve, we're asking all of our mug attendees to follow the following rules. One, please no self-promotion or pitching of any kind is permitted at these mug events. Don't contact people outside of the user group without their consent. And if MUG members share their use case at the user group, please don't share that information without their consent outside of this event.
I will say, feel free to use all of my use cases today.
And then this is being recorded, just so everybody knows. So please, like Chase mentioned earlier, please stay on mute while Josh is presenting. There is going to be a Q&A after the session. And also please, to ensure that we are abiding by MUG Code of Conduct, we are informing everyone again that we are, this meeting is being recorded, and it's also going to be on the MUG YouTube channel to promote training, education, and future learning. If you do not wish to participate in the live recorded session, just feel free to watch the recording later at a later time, which we will be linking after this meeting concludes. And if you have any questions, you can see the two emails here. You can message Jimmy Spencer, and you can have his email here, or advocacy@adobe.com. And then from that, we're going to go ahead and do, Josh, I'm going to pass it over to you if you want to do a quick introduction on yourself.
Perfect. Thank you, Maria. My name is Josh Arrington. Like Maria, I'm honored this year to be a Marketo champion. I've been using Marketo for 15 years now, since almost the beginning. I'm also a full stack developer, and I'm currently Chief Marketing Technology Officer at Kapturall Solutions. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, Maria.
Yes. Hi, I'm Maria Cruz. I'm a Senior Director of Market Orchestration. And Josh, you are the first person that I've met that has more years in Marketo. I have 11 years in Marketo, so almost from the beginning. And I'm from MRM, but yes, I'm excited to see your presentation today, Josh.
Great. Let's jump right in then. Just a quick overview of the agenda, what we're going to cover. We'll start off with an overview of what self-service flow steps are. Then I'm going to go into how to deploy the compute formula flow step in Adobe I/O. And then once it's deployed, how to install it in Marketo. And then we'll get to the fun stuff, which is the real world use cases for formulas and using the formulas in your marketing campaigns. And then we'll end with a Q&A. But as we go along, feel free to throw questions in below. I'd love to hear, are you already using flow steps? Are you using the compute formula? Or if not, what are you hoping to use it for? Love to discuss at the end kind of the ideas people have and how we can achieve them. So to start off, what are self-service flow steps? The self-service flow steps is a framework. It's a standard Marketo feature now that was launched about 1.5 years ago. And what it does is it allows us to extend the functionality of the platform by allowing us to create custom actions inside of Marketo Smart Campaigns. So where you have your standard actions like change data value or send email, now you can create whatever actions you want. In this case, today, what we'll be discussing is compute formula. So it's just a drag and drop into your flow and you can compute a formula. I often get asked, does this consume API calls? They don't consume any API calls. They're similar to webhooks in that way. Where they are not similar to webhooks is these can be run in batch because they are run asynchronously. You can run as many as you want in batch campaigns and without any problems. Next, I'm going to jump into deploying these in Adobe I/O. This is a little technical, but it's not difficult. If you have a development background, or if you're comfortable with the command line, this is going to be a breeze. If you're not, you may want to get some help with this first step, but it just needs to be done once, and then you're good to go. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but feel free to ask questions in the chat or at the end, or reach out to me afterwards. I'm happy to get in further into the details. But from a high level, what we're doing is Adobe has put the code for this flow step in GitHub. So we're going to use Git to copy that code to our local machine. We're going to get some configuration options, some credentials from Adobe I/O, bring those to our machine. We're going to combine them into an app that's ready to go, and then we're going to deploy it to Adobe I/O. Adobe I/O, if you're not familiar, is just a cloud runtime environment. So even though we say we're installing this flow step into Marketo, in reality, it lives in Adobe I/O, and that's where it runs. We're just giving Marketo a URL where it can connect to that runtime and do the processing. Some prerequisites: you will need to be a system admin in AEM and in Marketo for the installation process. Those are two separate things. You'll need to install Git, which you can do at this URL. You need to install Node.js, which is also a JavaScript runtime environment, and install the Adobe I/O command line interface, which is done with just this one command right here. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you. If you're a developer, obviously you're familiar with these tools, but if not, we're not going, you don't have to go into depth. You're not changing the code or anything. It's just a few commands. So we keep going. So the first step, as I mentioned, we're pulling the code down from the Git repository from Adobe with this command, git clone. So that's just going to create a folder on our local machine with all of the code that we need. Next step is to log into the developer console in AEM, Adobe I/O, and create a new project. You'll see a button that says create new project. You want to select project from template. And if, like me, you do not see project from template as an option, it is most likely that you don't have the correct privileges, and you'll need to request system admin privileges or developer privileges. Next, in the next screen, you'll select App Builder as your template. And yeah. From there, you will give your app a name, both a project title and an app name, which is all one word, only letters, no spaces or dashes or special characters. And then select a workspace to deploy in. Production and staging are shown by default, but you can also create your own workspace. Then you just hit next. The next screen, you'll be taken back to the workspaces. Select which one that you deployed in the previous step, whether production or staging, and you will see a button at the top right that says download all. This is where we get our configuration file with our credentials in it that we'll use to configure the flow step. Next, back in the terminal on our local machine, you want to navigate to the folder where we cloned the Git repository and run this AIO app use command. This will initiate the AIO app and then use the file location of that configuration file we just downloaded. Next, run the npm render manifest. This is just going to create the manifest that's needed for deployment. Here, there's going to be two important things that you're going to want to write down or keep note of because you'll need them in the installation process. And this is one of them. You'll set an API key here when you're doing the rendering the manifest. That API key will be used for the installation later, so make sure you remember it. The log level is just how much information is shared in the logs, and you can set that to, I believe, debug, info, or warning, or error. I'm not going to go into details of those, but you can set it to whatever you want. It'll still work. And then finally, or not finally, next, you'll install the npm packages. This is just npm install, a quick command. All that does is pull in all of the packages that are necessary to run the formula flow step and pulls them into your local machine. And finally, we deploy it to Adobe I/O with this AIO app deploy command. This will take a few seconds to run, and then you'll see this list of URLs. This is the second thing that you'll want to remember. Along with your API key, you need this URL, the one that ends in service swagger. This will be your installation URL. This is basically a JSON document that tells Marketo about the flow step and how it's configured. And that's it. We are deployed. Now we're ready to, once we're deployed, we have the URL, we have our API key, we're ready to install it into Marketo. The installation should be much more familiar to everyone who's Marketo. You'll need to be in Marketo admin, go to the admin area and service providers on the left side menu, select add new service, and then you'll be guided through a series of prompts. The first one, as I mentioned, is you need to put the installation URL. This is the URL we got in that previous step that ends in Swagger, service Swagger, which tells it how to connect to our service. And the next is the API key that you set so that we are securing this flow step so that everyone can use it. Next is the incoming field section. This is what tells Marketo what fields this flow step is allowed to write to. So we're going to be sending out formulas, creating formulas, and processing them. We need to tell Marketo when we get a response from those formulas, where we are able to store it. So you can add as many fields as you want. You can always come back and change this later. But this is where this is what we'll set on your flow step where you can write back to. When you set this, after that, you're done, you're installed, but it's a good idea to go to Service Actions and hit Refresh Pick List, as well as anytime you make changes to that mapping, you want to go ahead and refresh this pick list. This refresh happens every day, but if you're changing field mapping, most likely it's because you're doing campaigns, so you want to change it in the moment too, so that these drop downs that you see below are updated with the correct fields. And so you're ready to go. Now we can go ahead and use the compute flow step. Using the flow step, this flow step or any other flow step is just as simple as using any other built-in functionality. Like I said, send email, change data value, change program member status. It's going to show up in your flow, Smart Campaign flows on the right-hand side under a new section called Installed Flow Steps. So you can see it here. The flow step has 3 fields that you'll notice. First is formula, which will be no surprise. That's where you're putting your formula. You don't need to put an equal sign as you would in Excel. It's just the formula without that. Then you have 2 drop-downs, which are those mapping fields. There's return string and return number. And this is where the flow step will write back the response from your formula, the solution to your formula. If you're expecting text back, you want to use the return string. If you're expecting a number back, you want to use return number. Also, if you're expecting true or false, that should be under number. It'll be a 0 or 1 that gets passed back. And if you're expecting a date, that should be a string as well. So that should cover your field types. Great. Now on to the real world cases. The first one we have is weighted composite scoring. Also, I want to give a shout out to the Adobe team and specifically Kenny Arrington, who wrote this flow step, the code for it, as well as the user guide that most of this is based on. So definitely a great job there. And I will link that with this video and presentation so that you have that as well. But the first real-world use case is weighted composite scoring. Here, if you have behavior scoring, demographic scoring, maybe you have a score for every single one of your products, and you want to combine that into one score, you can do it with a formula. We can do products. Say we want to do weighting. So here we have behavior scoring. We want to weight at 30%. All we do is multiply that by 0.3 using the product function. And then we add it to the demographic score, which we're weighting at 100, so it doesn't need to be multiplied by anything. And we add those together. And then we add a rounding function so that we get a solid number, a integer, and get the results. So for example, if your behavioral score was 3 and your demographic score was 20, with the behavioral scores weighted at 30%, you would end up with a 21 composite score. And again, you can do this however you want. You can add as many scores as you want, and or if you didn't want to add them together, for example, if you wanted to do an average, you could also use an average function. There's a lot of possibilities here, but a great way to leverage your scoring and combine scores. Once you have that set up in your Smart campaign, all you need to do is set up a trigger that if any of the component scores changes, to recalculate that and then pass it back to, here I'm passing it back to formula response. You'd probably want it as a composite score field where you'd want to return it to. Great. Next use case is round robin lead assignments. So say you have 55, in this case, sales reps, and you want to assign leads fairly across all of those. What we can do is use the mod function, which creates, it's a remainder type function, and the lead ID. So this function will generate a number from 1 to 55 every single time based on the lead ID. It'll go sequentially. So 1 to 55, then once you get to lead ID 56, it'll go back to 1 through 55, always generating a number there. So you can save that in a round robin seed field. And then in another Smart campaign, you can go ahead and do the assignment based on that number, where you assign a number to each owner and you assign the lead to that owner based on the round robin seed. Next, this is just one of many things you can do with date differential. So you can calculate the days between two dates. You can calculate the months, weeks, hours, however you want to do it. But in this case, say we have an important part of tracking the effectiveness of our funnels is knowing how long someone sits in a specific stage. So in this case, between MQL and SQL. As long as we're tagging those leads when they enter those stages, the MQL date and SQL date, then we can use this formula to calculate how many days they were in that stage, just with this simple days function. Notice that because this is a string, a text date is going to be a text, that along with the token, I'm putting quotes around it. That way, the formula knows that it's text. If you want to calculate how many days someone has been in a stage, if they're still in that stage, you can use the today function as well, which will calculate the number of days going till today. You could, like I said, there's many applications for this. You could do, if you need to know days until renewal, years as a client, days since activity or login, you could easily calculate it with this. Next, check for free emails. If you do not want to allow people access, or you want to treat people different based on whether they gave you a business email or a free account email, or if you wanted to filter out, for example, competitors, you could put competitor domains in here. You can do a regex match based on the email address, and this will return a true or false, whether it matches one of those. So in this case, if the person has a Gmail account, it's going to show back true, and you can add them to a block list or add them to a list or send them a specific message asking them to update their email. So there's some in-depth use cases. We're going to do some rapid fire here just to give you some more ideas. You can do it for text capitalization. Proper will put everything in the correct case. You can also do lowercase or uppercase, depending on what you're trying to get out of this. You can also create a formula to format phone numbers so they're all the same across your system. Next, obscure data. Say you want to send an alert, but you can't send PII data, but you want to kind of give someone more information. You can obscure data with this formula, and it'll change the email. You can do this with IDs, passwords. Hopefully, you're not storing passwords in Marketo, but you could. Then a lookup. This is great. This is basically like a VLOOKUP all in one line. There's a million use cases for using this. In this case, we are using it to look up the international phone number for the country phone ID. So in this case, the first item you put into a switch is the needle and the rest is the haystack. So you're looking for Great Britain, and then you have the options. US is +1, Spain is +34, and then Great Britain is +44. So this would return 44. You could do this if you're going from, I have the country code, ES, US, GB, and I need the full country name. You could use it for anything where you need to look up values. I know anyone who's using Dynamics, sometimes you have lookup fields in Dynamics and it doesn't bring in the actual value of the field, it brings in the GUID. You could use this in simple scenarios where you just look up that GUID and actually return the value. So it could be super useful there. Calculate completeness. Say you have a profile with 4, 5, 10 fields, and you want to know how complete someone's profile is. Maybe it's for shipping, for something like that. Maybe you just want to know the health of the data in your platform or in your instance. Here you can use count A. The count A function basically counts whatever you send it, only if it's not empty. So I'm going to put all of these tokens inside of quotes, and it's going to return the number that aren't empty. And then I'm going to divide it by the total, and that'll give me a percentage of completeness. So say 3 out of these 4 were complete, then I would get back a completeness score of 75%. Next, open and click rate. I know we often use counters or scoring fields for email sends and email clicks and opens, so that we just increment those scores each time we send an email or someone opens an email or clicks an email. If you do the same or you have similar functionality or fields, you can use this to now calculate a rate. Anytime one of those changes, or maybe I want to run it daily, I can divide the open count divided by the send count and get an open rate for the individual user. I can then use that for segmentation. My really engaged people have above this number. My low engagement people have below this number, and really be able to treat them differently. Then finally, extract domain from email. You can extract any data from anything, but here we extract, say you just ask for email address. You can just pull the domain out of that using this by finding that @ symbol and pulling out the rest of the email address, the domain. And there's many more options. If you go to this URL, the compute formula flow step is based on Formula.js, which is a library that gives it that Excel-like formula functions. If you go to this page, they have, I think it's almost 300 different functions that you can use, and you can obviously mix and match. It also allows you to put in your formula right there and test it out, make sure it's working how you want it to before you try to deploy it into Marketo. So it's super useful for testing things out before you actually deploy and playing around. I've used it quite a bit. And just a couple easy tips and tricks. Again, do not include the equal sign. If you're coming from Excel, that'll be a hard habit to kick, but you don't need the equal sign. In fact, it won't work with the equal sign at the beginning of the formula. When using tokens, as I said, it's a number. If it's a number, you don't need quotation marks, but if it is a number, I have single quotes written here. You can use single quotes or double quotes. They both work, but definitely put quotes around anything that's a string or text, including dates. Test your formulas at that URL that I just shared. And finally, cheat. Use generative AI, use ChatGPT, send it some things you want it to do, let it get creative, test it before you deploy it. But it's been really useful for getting ideas and helping me kind of figure out how to combine some of these complex formulas together to get the result that I want. And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
There are a couple on our chat Slack that we have right now. The first question is, Josh, will you be providing this deck? Will you be sharing it out?
Sure. Yeah, we'll share it. The video will be on YouTube, but we'll also share the deck and yeah, all the links.
Perfect. The next question that we have, do you have any, so one, let's see, on what cases should we use double quotes around the tokens? I think that goes back when you were showing the formula.
Yeah, anytime that it's text. And you can see that if you tested on that URL that I sent, you'll see you need quotes. So if it's a token, if it's a score, for example, then it's a number, so you don't need any quotations. But if it's a date or text, if it's an email address, something like that, you definitely need the quotes around it.
And the next one, I'm not sure if you should, but any examples of return string?
Uh, yeah, so if you used, let's see if I have the examples here again. There should be several. The lookup, that would be a return string because it has the plus on it. Text capitalization would be return string. Obscure data would be return string, and the extract domain would be string. Actually, open rate, depending on how you did it. If you want that percent sign on there, then it would be return string. If you did it just as the 0.72 instead, then it would be return number.
Thanks, Josh. The next question is from Jenny. Her question is for round robin. How does Marketo know the weight fairly across records so that sales gets about the same number of leads, since the formula runs on each individual person record and not the group record, not the group of records?
Right. This specific use case would only work if every lead fairly. It only worked fairly if every lead went through this process. If every lead goes through the process, then the returned number, the IDs in Marketo are incremental. So it would go 1 to 55 or whatever number of sales reps you had, and then would start over at 1 and go through 55. However, if people got added to your instance and didn't go through this process, they would get skipped in this process, and so would the sales rep that would have the number assigned to them. So yeah, it wouldn't be completely fair if you didn't pass everyone through that.
And then the next question or statement is from Deborah. Deborah, I'm not sure if you can elaborate here. She mentioned she wants to calculate time in minutes or hours for lead processing to sync. But I didn't know, Deborah, if you want to go a little bit more in depth or a question on how to. Is that what you were asking? How? I'm not sure if Deborah is still on. I'm going to go to the next one.
I think you can calculate,
okay,
as long as you have 2 date times. I believe you could write a formula that, but I'm fairly sure you could write a formula that calculates the time in minutes and seconds and hours between 2 date times as well.
great. Thanks, Josh. Let's see. I'm trying to see the next one. The next one is from Denise. Is there a list somewhere of what formulas are available? I think you provided that towards the end, right? There was a link that you provided, Josh, on the deck.
Which was, I'm sorry, what was?
So they're asking if there was, is there a list somewhere of what formulas are available?
Yeah, I think Warren just shared it in the chat. It's the
Oh, perfect.
formulajs.info/functions.
Thank you, Warren. And then let's see. Any other options to execute compute formula flow steps if we don't have Adobe IO account, an Adobe IO account?
Yes. You can build this anywhere. You don't have to have it in Adobe IO. I know we run a lot of ours before this came out. We ran a lot of ours in Azure. You can write it as Azure Functions in Amazon and Google. If you want to get really creative, you could run it on your local machine. Although that'd be challenging. Really, you just need it running somewhere, and you need a URL where Marketo can connect to it. So you can run this anywhere. I'm limited on what I can say about for self-promotion reasons, but
Yeah.
yes, there are other
Yeah.
options.
And I believe the last question that I see here is, can we apply the formulas on custom fields?
Yes, yeah, custom fields, and you should be able to apply them for member fields as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, we got one, two. One is, our Adobe IO accounts free? I don't think they're free,
They
but correct me
are,
if I'm wrong.
yeah, they're an add-on for any AM products. I don't think they're free. I think you can get a trial, a 30-day trial if you apply. There should be a form on the site where you can request access, but yeah, I would talk to your Adobe rep.
And then the last question is, any new improvements or updates planned around compute formula steps in future Marketo updates? Um,
Not that
I,
I know of.
not that I know of as well. I was going to say we can email, the emails that we had that we started in the beginning, but not that I'm aware of it as well, Josh.
Yeah. If you wanted to, this can serve as a template. If you have a developer, or you have a development background, um, you went through the 3 stages of pulling down the code from Git, configuring it locally, and then deploying it into Adobe IO. You can, when it's on your local machine, you can change the code as well. If you wanted to make changes for how it works, if you wanted to turn it into a completely different flow step, you could do that. That's beyond the scope of this meeting, but if you wanted to do that, you could.
And other than that, Josh, I think those were all the questions that I'm seeing here on the chat. I think you answered every single one of them.
Great. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear your use cases if I can help you solve something, or just tell me what you're working on. I'd love to see more ways to use this. So feel free to reach out. And if you're at Summit next week, I will be there. Come say hi.
Everybody's saying thank you. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.